My thanks to Brian and the other conference organizers and the university for hosting us. Conference like this may look easy, but usually involves months or sometimes a year or so of planning and orchestration. And we are missing Bob Millett here, who, as announced, thanks, wasn't able to be with us at the last minute, so Brian asked me to stand in. So I'm sorry. I apologize to anybody who was looking forward, all of us who were looking forward to hearing from Bob. And after listening to Elder Porter, who stresses that he's not speaking for the LDS Church, but as a member of the governing councils of the church, as an individual who's well experienced, I'd have to go a good bit further than that and say that I am not speaking, of course, at all for the LDS Church, though I am believing, practicing Latter-day Saint. I'm just a fella who thinks about religion, thinks about Mormonism, and including its relations to religions of the world and to the world itself. Melissa came up to me before our proceedings launched and said, I apologize for the program, and then I misunderstood what she was saying, but she pointed me to a line in the program that said that I was the author of a book called Mormons in the Bible. So I do want to make it clear that I am the author of Mormons in the Bible, and God is the author of Mormons in the Bible. What we're doing here this weekend is important, and it's important for a number of reasons. It's important for reasons that have always obtained, that have always existed, but that some of them are more clear since September 11th, 2001, than they were to at least the public before 2001. There are a number of reasons why interreligious dialogue is crucial, but let me just point to two, if I may. The first of which should engage all peoples who are religious or who are interested in religion. The second emerges especially in an LDS context for those who are LDS or who are interested in the LDS, which I take it may pertain to everyone, all of us in this room. The first point or question is, what is religion for? What is religion about? What is religion? There are folks who think that religion is fundamentally about creed or worldview, a belief system. There are others who think it's primarily about a code of ethics, a series of thou shalts and thou shalt nots. There are some who think it's about ordinance or ritual or sacrament. There are those who define religion as transcendent experience. There are others who emphasize the community dimension of religion. Kathy Albanese, who teaches at Santa Barbara here in these general environs, invented a mnemonic of the 4 C's to help people think about religion: creed, code, cultus, which is a fancy technical term for ritual or ordinance, and community. So it's possible to take all those dimensions as part of what religion is. But I think that beneath, interwoven with all of these dimensions is something else, something that fuels them or drives them. And what is that? I came to think about it some years ago when I was making a lot of maps about religion in America for a book. I was making hundreds of maps, and I didn't know anything about making them, so I was winging it. And I had a research assistant, a young college freshman becomes sophomore, becomes senior, because I took a long time at this work. And she was a brilliant student of math and other things, and she taught me something interesting as we were working on these cartographs. And that is, math is not about numbers. Numbers are a tool, a symbol system to get us to what math is about, namely relations of things. And I thought similarly about religion, that religion is fundamentally about relations, but on my own terms and in light of Elder Porter's comments a few minutes ago, I'd like to stress that by relations I don't mean merely being nice, and I don't mean holding hands and singing Kumbaya around the fire merely, but that proper and good and healthy relations involve a belief system and a framework. So I'm talking about relations for the Abrahamic traditions as relations between us and God, between us and our environment, the planet Earth and the cosmos more broadly, between us and ourselves, a matter of integrity by which I do not mean merely honesty, but integratedness, and certainly relations between us and others, by which I do not mean merely community, and by which I do not mean merely ethics, but I mean something deeper, much more capacious, much more broad. I mean relations among us as kin, affectionate relationships driven by the reality or the concept of love among kin. So to my second point, emerging out of a Mormon matrix. Kin is an interesting word that informs a number of modern English words as well, of course, as those of other languages. Our word kindness, for instance, connects with the root of kin. I take it, though the etymologies aren't too explicit, I take it that kindness comes from the notion of treating others as kin in relationship. So also the word kindred, meaning a kind, a type, a category, a species, a family of objects or animals or people. In Joseph Smith's vision, and he did have a vision, whether or not you're believers in Joseph Smith's enterprise or not, it's clear if one studies him enough that his thinking, his program, his entire enterprise had a vision, had a trajectory, had a point where it was headed in lurching, difficult, erratic, but unmistakable. Well, that's not true, it's very mistakable, but I think ultimately clear ways. He did have a vision, a trajectory to his body of thought and teaching and behavior. And the points I wish to highlight about that vision for present purposes are two. Human beings are kin, literally, spiritually, eternally. That's a commonplace among Latter-day Saints, but it means that even before this earth was made and we became human beings on this planet, we were kin. Secondly, salvation is an enterprise for kin. It is not an enterprise merely for individuals, though of course it does entail individual behavior and choices. But much like Kobe Bryant cannot be eclipsed as a beautiful human creature in motion, I beg your pardon, Professor Hancock. I don't think there's anyone who does that better than he, and also that's not sufficient to win championships. It is a kin thing, a team thing. It won't work It's very disorienting to be a Celtic dude, so quit being harsh on me, Hancock. To be a Celtic dude with Boston roots and be talking to you here in this vicinity, so I'm gaining my bearings here. But I think that's terribly important to grasp some of the implications. Salvation is a kin enterprise, not an individual enterprise. The concept of salvation, the word salvation, does have currency among Latter-day Saints. Mormons talk typically about a plan of salvation, or they make a distinction between salvation as a stepping stone to other stuff. But salvation is the term salvation is partly an inheritance from an earlier Christianity and from the Bible, English versions of which translate a series of concepts with the word to save or saving or salvation. But it's a recessive gene in Mormonism. It's a recessive trait in relation to the dominant trait of something more, something wider, something that Latter-day Saints think of as higher, namely the concept of exaltation, or what Paul said in the book of Romans when he reflected on joint heirship with Christ. And that notion causes much consternation, much disgust towards Mormonism. I think it's even easily confused inside Mormonism as well as outside. So I won't get into that thicket now, which is not my point. But my point is that exaltation, or salvation dash exaltation, is relational in its nature. Again, it's an enterprise for kin. Joseph said a lot of things along the way, Joseph Smith, but in the end, in the 1840s, in his mature thought and theology, which had layers and layers of revelations that he understood behind it, the celestial kingdom, what Latter-day Saints think of as the highest heaven, is defined as the establishment and the continuation of relations. It is familial. You can't do it alone any more than you can have a good marriage by being the world's nicest human alone. A marriage is a relational deal. A family is a relational deal. Kin is relational by definition, and that's how Joseph Smith understood not only the processes of heading towards heaven, but the definition of heaven. The joy, the glory, the happiness, the goodness of being there was relational, familial, a kinship thing. If we grasp that, we might have avenues to understand a bunch of stuff about Mormonism that looks really weird to everybody else. Polygamy, adoption, religious ritual adoption of others into family, baptism for the dead, the absurd, strange enterprise of trying to do genealogy for the entire human race. All those things that look foreign and alien, patriarchs and patriarchal blessings that look foreign and alien to outsiders, are more readily understood if you understood that kinship is the glue that holds the molecule together. In Joseph Smith's mature vision, then, Judgment Day, and his mature vision is not fully encompassed by Section 76 of the Doctrine and Covenants, of the LDS Doctrine and Covenants, by the way. His mature vision does not picture Judgment Day working like Harry Potter's hat, Harry Potter's sorting hat. You Slytherin, you Gryffindor, you A-, you C-. You're saved, you're not so much. It really wasn't didn't work like that so much as what I said before, the glory, the definition, the happiness, the joy was being in right relation. Contemporary Latter-day Saints often think about those relations in terms of marriage, in terms of the nuclear family, and more broadly informed by genealogy and such in wider realms. But I'd like to suggest finally that our conversations this weekend and our ongoing efforts at interreligious dialogue might be too small for Joseph Smith's vision because of the notion of kinship and because of his insistence that human beings are literally, spiritually, and eternally kin. So I think the notion of kin might be expanded beyond marriages and nuclear families to include the notion of peoples and even churches. Judgment may be less about you were found in the right pew in the eternities or the right mosque or church than it is about having and achieving right relation between us and God, us and where we live, us and ourselves, and us and each other in kinship on meaning all of us. How together might we respond to such a vision? One way to do it would be through large affairs like this, a conference that might sponsor our thinking and give us a scope of what's going on right now. Another way, however, is more locally in our own lives, in our own conversations, in our own institutions of business, home, universities. Let me just give you a quick glimpse, thanks, of a couple of things that are going on where I hang out in Logan, Utah, at Utah State University. We've launched there a new religious studies program, not a Mormon studies program as it's often mistaken for, but this is an enterprise in the study of religion, of which my position is one key part. And when one isn't just doing book learning for A's or B's, but is serious about the enterprise of understanding religions, it becomes interreligious dialogue intrinsically. And that has a number of spin-offs. It means that students are launched on individual research projects like Mormons and Jews in Utah, the history of, or Mormons and Roman Catholics in Utah or elsewhere. Lots of research projects that I won't elaborate now for want of time because Melissa is frowning at me discreetly. We facilitate on-campus exchanges initiated between groups of religionists. For instance, most recently between some evangelical students from Southern California and Latter-day Saints students on campus. Whether or not their sponsoring agencies are interested in that or supportive of that or not, we host them on campus because we think from an academic as well as a personal vantage that that's important. Another example is a seminar, a graduate seminar I'll teach this fall on the Mormon encounter with world religions. Another is a conference we'll have this October there, who will be anchored by a guest named Mark Silk that we'll bring in from Connecticut. Mark is a friend who was clever enough to launch a center at Trinity College in Connecticut, a center for the study of secularism. Lots of us in the room are interested in studying religion, and religion is a topic, an entity, a phenomenon that we can study. It seemed very ingenious of him, I thought, to invert that and have a center for the study of secularism. So lots of other things going on. It's time for me to sit down. I hope as we think, as we listen to one another, and as we think about what happens here this weekend, and as we do it, as we engage in interreligious dialogue, Those of us who are or who are trying to understand the Mormon part of that will remember passages like the 29th chapter of 2nd Nephi in the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith, as Elder Porter accurately pointed out, was not a pluralist in the modern sense of the word. But there are passages like this chapter that talk about cast in the voice of God, the assertion that I, the Lord, am God of the people in the north and in the south and in the east and in the west and upon the isles of the sea. And I give my word unto all the peoples of the world, all the nations, the passage reads. Or the 13th article of faith, which suggests if there is anything virtuous, lovely, or of good report or praiseworthy, paraphrasing and borrowing from Paul, we, Latter-day Saints, seek after those things. Thus, Latter-day Saints have important truths to proclaim, but they do not have nor claim a monopoly on truth itself, and it is heretical. No, that's too gentle of a word. It is apostate. It is a misunderstanding. It is a standing apart from Joseph Smith's theology to assume consciously or unconsciously that Latter-day Saints do have a monopoly on truth. I am looking forward to hearing what one translation of a passage in the book of Ephesians calls the rich variety of God's wisdom. Thank you.